Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel, welcome to another GT Sport opinion piece. A little bit late to the party in this one, but we're going to talk about the rumoured, although not yet official, but generally accepted as being a reality, and that is that Gran Turismo 7 is going to release cross-platform on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Now initially Gran Turismo 7 was touted as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, so this news that it's going to be released on PlayStation 4 as well has quite obviously brought a little bit of derision from some of the sort of Gran Turismo community, particularly those that own a PlayStation 5, who feel that the game being released on PlayStation 4 is going to hold back the PlayStation 5 version. Now, given Sony's history when they release games cross-platform of having a feature parity, then those concerns are probably quite well founded. However, in this video I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I think it may not be as big a problem as people are making out. So without further ado, let's move on to reason number 1. Now I will do my very best to keep these quick and concise and keep any kind of techno babble down to a minimum. So reason number 1 why I think the fact that Gran Turismo 7 is releasing on PlayStation 4 as well as PlayStation 5 is not that big of an issue, or certainly not as big an issue as it's possibly being made out, is the fact that the kind of generational leap between PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 is very different to previous generational leaps, for example PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4. So in the past when Sony released a new console, there would be pretty much no similarities between them in terms of how they were kind of architecturally made, how the memory worked, or whether the memory would be the same. They probably even used different companies, either Nvidia or AMD for the graphics cards. So therefore when it came to cross-platform development, it essentially did turn any kind of project into 2 different games, and requiring 2 different teams to develop them, splitting resources, and obviously then this has a detrimental effect on both games, but in particular the newer consoles game, because there was just nothing that they could really share between the 2 consoles. For PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 this is very different. PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 are very similar architecturally. They're very similar in the way that the components are binded together and how they work together with each other. And obviously we've got PlayStation 4 Pro in between them as well, so from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 4 Pro to PlayStation 5 took a much more evolutionary approach rather than a kind of next generation approach. Now that's not to say that the PlayStation 5 doesn't have next generational power over the PlayStation 4, but what it does have is very similar kind of development tools, very similar architecture, and therefore this means that Polyphony Digital can essentially just develop the game on PlayStation 5 and then scale everything back until it works acceptably on PlayStation 4. There's a lot more assets that can be shared between the 2 consoles, and obviously the PlayStation 4 Pro as well, which means that I don't think the impact of developing the game on PlayStation 4 will have anywhere near the same impact as we've seen on previous generations, for example a cross-platform game on PS4 and PS3. And it kind of is a very similar setup, if you like, to the way PC graphics cards work. You know, developers don't develop a game just to work on the highest end graphics cards, they develop the game to max out, you know, so they have the sliders, the settings, the graphics and everything will max out the most powerful graphics cards out there, but you can scale everything back to work on much lower end hardware as well. You only need to go and look at modern releases on PC. Will max out at Nvidia RTX 380 Ti, but the very same game, as long as you kind of scale down the graphics and the resolution and stuff like that, will work on a graphics card that's 10 years old as well. So I think the way that Sony have now approached the way they kind of develop their consoles is very much that kind of graphics card evolution rather than just standalone consoles and pieces of technology. So that's the biggest reason that I think that it won't be such an issue for the game releasing on PlayStation 4 as well as PlayStation 5. But there is a couple of other caveats as well that we're going to look at, so let's move on to reason number 2. So probably 2 of the biggest concerns I'm seeing people kind of been worried about the fact the game's on PS4 is that they think that it's going to significantly reduce the number of player count that we can have maybe in a multiplayer race, and they are worried about whether the PlayStation 4 is going to be able to handle a day-night transition, wet weather transition, because it's not on GT Sport. Now the unusual thing about that is that I don't think we don't have day weather or transitions or wet weather transitions on PlayStation 4 because this console can't handle it. At the end of the day, Polyphony Digital included these in Gran Turismo 5 and 6 on much weaker hardware, and both of those projects were very significantly and ambitious as well. So it was an ambitious looking game, the graphics were fantastic for the time, and it had all these things like day-night transitions in them. So I don't think it's a case of PlayStation 4 can't handle it. I think it was probably a design choice or maybe a time choice. Now, it is Polyphony Digital we're talking about here. They've never been the quickest developers in the world. So I have a sneaky suspicion that they simply ran out of time, and that's why we've just got very different times of day and different kinds of weather in the game rather than a kind of day-night weather transition. Another reason why it's possibly not been included in the game is because GT Sport was very esports centric. So in order for players to be able to practice for esports events or kind of practice properly in the same conditions, I suspect that might be another reason why we don't have it as well. So players could set up lobbies and races with exactly the same conditions that they were going to be facing when they went into these kind of FIA championships and sort of competing for places on the esports calendar. But that's just a little bit of an opinion of mine, just a theory of mine as to why it's not been included. Other little things we can look at is, of course, let's not forget that there seemed to be more capability within the PlayStation 4 than we're seeing. If we go all the way back to 2017 here, this is a retro race from Suzuka East. It's Group 4, and as you can see up in the top right hand corner, we have 24 players on the grid. Yes, that's right, when Gran Turismo Sport was first released, we had 24 players on Daily Race B and I believe on Daily Race C as well. I'm not sure about Daily Race A. And another little indication that the player count could possibly be higher, although it has to be said that running AI cars compared to human opponents is maybe slightly different. But you've got the mission challenge where you take the endurance race around Lago Maggiore, and as you can see up in that top right hand corner there, 30 cars on the grid as well. So I don't think it's a case of the PlayStation 4 can't handle more players, more cars or wet weather transition. I just think it was a design choice. And one other thing I would like to just kind of add in here is, let's take it when Assetto Corsa Competizione released on console. Now, it was always said in the kind of year, the 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it was, before it released on console, that the reason it wasn't on console is because the consoles couldn't handle it. What happened to turn out was that once Kunos, or whoever is the developers of that game, decided they wanted to make a quick buck, all of a sudden it did work on console just fine with everything in place. A lot of people will tell you that the physics have been dumbed down on the console version. I've got it on both the PlayStation and the Xbox as well as PC. I can 100% confirm you that the physics are identical. And we've also got all the other things like the wet weather, day-night transitions from Assetto Corsa Competizione fully working in the console version as well. So probably just another indicator that it shouldn't really be a problem for Polyphony Digital to get that kind of system working on Gran Turismo 7 on PlayStation 4. So that's reason number 2 why I think we shouldn't be too worried about these things not being features. So let's move on to reason number 3, and I'll keep this one fairly short and brief, but put simply, over a console's life cycle, the kind of tools for developing on it become more efficient, developers become more efficient at developing on the console, and essentially you start to get more bang for your buck from the hardware. Now, Gran Turismo Sport was released in 2017. By the time Gran Turismo 7 comes out, a rumoured 2022 release, that's going to be 5 years after. And 5 more years of kind of the tools being more refined and starting to get a little bit more out of the memory. It's possible that Sony will have kind of reduced the footprint of the operating system significantly in that time, giving the developers more hardware to work with, or more memory, more processing power to work with. And obviously Polyphony Digital will also have kind of refined their tools and kind of had a little bit more deep learning of the system over that same course of time. So it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that from 2017 to 2022 there's possibly even as much as 20% more power there to work with, just through the efficiency of tools and learning. You see this in every console's life cycle. The games that come out when the console releases, look a lot worse in most cases than the games that released towards the end of a console's life cycle. You've seen it with Gran Turismo 3 to Gran Turismo 4 on PlayStation 2, and you did kind of see a similar pattern with Gran Turismo 5 to Gran Turismo 6 on PlayStation 3. So I do think that for that reason, you know, maybe if there was for some reason a kind of shortage of hardware or power for Polyphony Digital to get a wet weather system or a day-night transition system on GT Sport, I think now they probably could, just through having that much more kind of sort of understanding of the console's capabilities. So that is the 3 reasons why I am not that concerned about Gran Turismo 7 releasing on PlayStation 4. I don't think it will have too much of an impact on the PlayStation 5 game. The big reason for me is really the first one. If I could kind of put it into a car analogy for you, if you went from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, it's like comparing a Ferrari 360 from 2006 to a Nissan GTR from 2014. There's just simply nothing that's interchangeable about them. You know, there's just no similarities to both cars except that they kind of go from A to B and turn circles and go round corners. Whereas if you were to take sort of PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 4 Pro and then PlayStation 5, it'd be like taking a 2014 Nissan GTR, 2017 Nissan GTR with maybe a big old turbo, and then the 2020 Nissan GTR with maybe a jet engine attached to it. So yeah, the one with the jet engine goes a lot quicker, but there's a whole lot that's very similar to the 2 previous cars as well. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments of my opinions here. Do you think I'm just talking baloney? Do you think Gran Turismo 7 maybe will be a disaster because it's on PlayStation 4 as well? Have I maybe kind of made you look at things slightly different? I'm always interested to read your comments. If you have made it to this point of the video and you have liked what you've heard here, or you generally like what I do on the channel and haven't subscribed, then please do hit that subscribe button. It does help the channel out. And also maybe consider hitting that like button as well. But until the next video, thank you very much for listening. I hope I haven't bored you too much, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.